Hello, I'm Alex Mansfield, the host of Manny Talks Shooting, and welcome to another episode. This is the shooting podcast where I talk to individuals all across the shooting industry. We'll talk competition, self-defense, concealed carry. If you like this content, check out our YouTube channel, Manny Talks Shooting. And without further ado, let's get to this episode. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to another installment of Manny Talks Shooting, the shooting podcast on the internet, because I don't live near any of these people, so that's how it has to be. It has to be on the internet. We're sitting down tonight with a man you may or may not know. It's Robert Hewins. How you doing, sir?
I'm living the dream, Alex. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for sitting down with me tonight on a wonderful Tuesday evening in January. It's always a good time. We're going to have a good time, listeners. I absolutely guarantee it. It was interesting enough. Before talking to you, I actually, what was it? Before I started talking to you, I had a buddy who hit me up. Told me because I was looking for reasons to get a new trigger in my wife's P320. And he's like, I know a guy to talk to. And he sent me to you. Or he got the information
Oh,
from me.
God. It's our mutual friend, Mr. Joe.
Yeah, Wisco Joe. I love my buddy
Yeah,
Joey.
Wisco Joe.
He's a
the
good
man.
dude. Yeah,
That
drove his
guy,
family.
just to talk about how good of a person he is, I've wanted him to be on other people's podcasts before just because this dude gave up shooting because there were two kids in his neighborhood whose parents were both trash. And him and his wife adopted those kids. Like they took two extra kids into their household and they already had two kids of their own to feed. So like this dude basically gave up shooting so that he could give these kids a successful life. And on top of that, he's a combat Marine, right? Like he's literally the definition of Americana. I don't know. I can tell you right now, I don't think I would have the capacity to do that. So the fact that he did speaks volumes about him.
Mm-hmm. And the green crayons always taste good, right? Is that always a Yep. So that was a thing I didn't know we had in common, a mutual person in common. I mean, we all have some similar people in common, but it was kind of cool to hear that. But yeah. So Wisco Joe, everybody, he was like, God, episode 3. I want to say he was episode 3 of the podcast. It's been a hot minute. I've got to remember we're on. This will be 139 episodes of Manny Talks Shooting.
Wow, that's a lot of episodes.
A lot of episodes. I've been consistent since episode 50. Since 50, we have not missed a week. And knock on wood, we keep going strong. But anyway, so for people who don't know you, Rob, who are you and how did you get into shooting?
So I was the weird kid in high school that was like into guns. Was always into them, wanted to be around them, everything else like that. I had a natural talent for it, kind of. Like if you watch me play basketball or like sports with balls, I'm like horribly uncoordinated. But meanwhile, like when it comes to like shooting, I have like I'm was pretty darn good at it from the beginning. But I was friends with a kid named Louis Lara. He used to be in a USPSA, and he was a GM by the time he was like 16. I think he had like the second fastest reload in the country at like 16 years old for a junior shooter. This was back when limited was big. This is back in like 2010, 2009, when Todd Jarrett was young. and yeah, it's kind of wild because it was during that time frame that I met JJ Racaza before JJ Racaza blew up. I wasn't into it then, so kind of grew up in a household with parents who were kind of anti-gun. Like they really didn't want me to be a part of it because they didn't know about it or anything else like that. They tried to like get me into like other stuff. They're like, my dad's been a basketball coach for 40 years. So he's like, why don't you get into basketball? Why don't you get into football? Meanwhile, the stuff that I wanted to do, like shooting, karate, they were kind of like, no. Cause they just didn't know that much about it. And especially since like the internet wasn't that big a thing back in like 2009, 2010, it was kind of like a weird place to be. But I used to watch on the Outdoor Channel every Wednesday night Shooting USA. And Shooting USA used to cover like all the USPSA matches, the national level matches, and like the Bianchi Cup and all that fun stuff. So that's where I used to actually see guys like Todd Sindelar and Ron Francisco and Phil Strader, and other people like on these national level matches, like way back in the day, just doing their thing. And so it kind of makes it funny because now I've met a lot of those guys. Todd Sindelar in particular is a funny one because when I met him, it was at a Fredericksburg local, and I walked up to Todd and I was like, "Hey Todd, you like, are you Todd Sindelar?" And he was like, "Yes, I am." I was like, "Dude, I used to watch you on TV when I was a kid, like 15 years ago when I was in high school." And Todd goes, "Oh, that makes me feel old." I'm like, "Well, you're not, you're not old, but you ain't young." So,
Hmm.
um, I was into I got into jujitsu and MMA when I was in college, and when I graduated, like I actually thought that's what I wanted to do for a living. And I spent like a good amount of time after I graduated in a jujitsu and MMA gym trying to make that happen. But I just sort of woke up one day and realized I didn't love it as much as I thought I did. And I actually tried to get back into it in 2019 and 2020. And it was during that time that I was like, oh, I kind of want to try the shooting competition thing. And I had just bought an AR and I just bought a Glock. And I tried a 2 gun match at a place called Peacemaker, and that was fun. But like me being in jujitsu again, and then of course the pandemic happened. Now a lot of us were still doing practice, behind closed windows with cardboard on the windows so nobody could see. Not letting anybody into the place because of COVID. But even during that, I was just sort of like, man, this isn't as much fun as it used to be, and I really want to get into the shooting thing. And I just sort of like dove headfirst into the shooting thing and got into that world. It took me a minute to find USPSA. I was screwing around a lot of 3 gun and 2 gun matches, mostly 2 gun. Um, my first USPSA ever was, I think, in like super late 2020. Um, and I did terrible. I think I came in like last place. I was accurate, but I wasn't fast at all.
Hmm.
And I was like, this is stupid. Like, this isn't a real sport, blah, blah, blah. And I, I walked away and was like this because I was winning 2 gun matches at the time. Come to find out, like, there's not that much heat at 2 gun matches. So I left and then came back in like March of 2021. I was like, you know what? Like, maybe I do need to go get better with a handgun. And I had just put a loophole Delta point on my Glock 17 with an X300 on it. So I was like, we'll go to a USPSA match. Went and met a guy named Mike Danchek. People may or may not know who that guy is. He's kind of a legend in his own right. And compared to the first match, people were just way more nice and helpful. Um, I also started off my USPSA career. The first match ever was at a match where the match director wasn't particularly nice, and he's not known for being nice. So like I walked up with like my Glock 17 with like a stendo stick and was like, all right, put me in open because that's where went to that match. Wasn't very nice. Did it, came in last place, and was just like, this is stupid. I'm never going to come back. Second match, the guy who is also a little bit abrasive, but he's genuinely a good person. Um, he's the reason he's one of the reasons I kept coming back. That and I wanted to get better with a pistol. But during 2021, I was sprinkling in like a lot of 2 gun and multi-gun with some USPSA, and then not getting better at USPSA, but understanding a little bit more of it. Um, Late 2021, I was coming to some, and Matt Hempel actually um, saw me, and I think I posted like an Instagram video or something like that, and he was just like, "You need to come train with me for a day." It's like, okay. So I went and trained with Matt Hempel for a day, and he got a lot of the BS out of the way, fixed a lot of it. And it was early 2022. I was like, okay, either I need to get serious about one sport and focus on that. Um, I wanted to do 3 gun, actually. I was going to go out and buy a Dissident Arms magazine fed shotgun, but at the time, it was like a 6 month lead time, and it could only run certain types of shells that hadn't been on the shelf in like since COVID started. Um, and furthermore, I didn't even know anything about the models that they offered. So I wanted to talk to somebody from that department, and they just flat out like would not answer the phone. I kept getting their customer service lady that would be like, okay, like somebody's going to talk to you. And then it would just go to voicemail every time. So that's when I was like, all right, I already have an X5 Legion. I'm going to just buy another one and I'm going to get into USPSA, and then the rest is history. And now, like, I think that's probably the best thing that ever could have happened because I love hit factored pistol matches so much. USPSA is such a good time. I've met so many good people. Um, and I just, yeah, I love it. It's so much fun.
Absolutely. The competitive shooting atmosphere, the camaraderie is infectious, and it is far too addicting to ever put up. Like, I don't understand why people leave the sport every 3 years. I don't understand it. Right? It's crazy to me that they shoot it, they love it, and then they just cut it cold turkey, and then we get every 3 years to get more new people. I like I've been so I joined in the end of 19, started shooting in end of 20 because of course COVID fucked everything. So yeah, and I'm still here, right? And we're beginning of 2024, so I can't. Oh, it's so fun and addicting. But you've met a lot of good people like Hempel. I mean, the world's probably the pronoun best duck hunter in competitive shooting. Because he doesn't shoot matches anymore. It seems like he just is like, I'm gonna go be a duck hunter with Wes
he
Gordon.
he's actually got a very good reason why he's taking a break. Without delving too much into it, he's dealing with some things right now in his own life that he's got to get straightened out. So he's taking some time off from that. But
Oh,
I still talk to the guy. I actually just talked to him today. Still a good dude. Still loves shooting. He's got to get some stuff straight in his own life.
oh yeah. So funny story. I had to make a work trip to Pennsylvania, but I had to fly into Newark. So I had this rental car, and I got Matt Hempel's number in my phone. I call him. He doesn't answer, but I leave him the shittiest voicemail. Like, bro, you fucking people in Jersey don't know how to drive. It was bad. I was like, dude, this sucks. These people don't know how to drive. Your roads are crap. And it's like, oh, it was funny. He never got back to me, but I knew he got the message.
Don't ever don't. Well, I he doesn't text. He doesn't answer his phone. The only way to really like reach him is through Instagram.
Which is so weird. You'd think that would be harder to get a hold of somebody than actually calling or texting them.
Dude, I'll just be driving, like, occasionally you'll call your buddies, be like, hey, how you doing, whatever. And like every time I've called him, like it's gone straight to voicemail, and then I'll text him on Instagram and be like, sup, you dick, and he'll answer like immediately. So-
Right?
and I'm like,
Well,
well, I can't do, and I can't text you while I'm driving, too
hmm
much. So it's just one of those things. You say what's up to him when you can. But he is a good dude. So
yeah. Well, and even it was funny because when he didn't answer, I called my buddy Chris Gelnett, and
yeah, Galnet.
yeah,
Galnet's the man too.
he loves orange far too much, but it's okay. Um, no, and I was just talking to him the whole ride back because I had to get from Newark, New Jersey, to Allentown, Pennsylvania, which I
Yeah.
didn't know that I was only 20 miles from Antalani, and I've been like I'd go shoot a match if it wasn't freaking December.
Yeah. Yeah, that's Antalani's pretty close there, but Chris Gelnet's another awesome one too. I'm so grateful that I met him because he's that dude. I wanted to go shoot the Carolina Classic with him
hmm
in 2022, and he was like, "Well, me and Steve Bird are on the Blue Bullet squad," and I was driving down with him, and I was like, "You think you could ask them if I could join the Blue Bullet squad?" And he was like, "Let me ask." They let me join. I wasn't even sponsored, so you got all these Blue Bullets squad guys like wearing their jerseys, and then there's like my big dumb ass like sitting in the back, like, "What's up?"
Right.
So he's another great one though. Like Chris Gelnett would give you the shirt off your back easily.
hmm
Between him and Hempel, I mean, like that's the dream team right there as far as knowing people.
Right. You know what's funny about Bird? I've met Bird in person once, and I always call him Grandpa. And so my first real interaction with Bird was I was CROing a stage in 2023 at the Buckeye Blast, and his big, large feet were like riding the fault line. And for my guys forgot, myself and my crew forgot to rake back the rocks on this part of the fault because you kind of crash into it. So you push the rocks, and I'm like, they're like the one guy on the offside's like, isn't that foot faults? I'm like, no, we didn't maintain the surface area, and his fat feet couldn't tell. So it's not on him that you want to give him a foot fault. Which really it was. There's a for you. There's a wall here and a wall here, but the fault lines didn't connect to the one wall. It touched one wall, but it didn't touch the other wall. So he
Yeah,
was literally like, his fat. So if this is the fault line, my bottom hand, his foot was like, oh, here, let me get on the camera.
So I was like that, and I'm like, no, his size 14 foot. No, we're fine. He didn't
Yeah,
need it.
that's
Didn't he?
Bird.
Didn't it? Yeah, it was fun. Bird was fun. I met Noel Zarza in person that match too.
Noel's another fantastic one.
He likes to show his money. I'll sell you money because he's got his golf cart now.
Oh, well, that dude, I mean, like, yeah, he's Noel. I don't know if you know this, but Noel retired as an Army major. Um, so he's got a nice government pension. And on top of that, like, he still works a full time job. Um, honestly, for a job that he hasn't really enjoyed doing it for a long time, but just that's so he could send his kids to college.
Right.
Um,
I was supposed to. I need to reach back to Noel because we're supposed to do a podcast together, but he scheduled it on New Year's Eve, and I forgot to block it out on my calendar. And then I was like, "We got to reschedule this. My wife's gonna kill me." So
yeah,
I
Noel's the
get.
man, though. He's another good one.
I think.
I've met so many good people. It's hard to. I can count like on multiple hands the amount of good people that I met in the sport, and I can probably count on one hand the people that I would genuinely want to stay away from.
Hmm. Yeah, it's very like a competitive shooting match is like the one safest place you can kind of leave your crap laying around and not worry about someone stealing your crap, for the most part. There are those bad case scenarios where it's not the norm. You know, all the good people.
Yeah.
Because the best part is everyone there at the match has guns. So if someone tries to steal someone's shit, everyone has guns. I mean,
Well,
I
it's
mean,
like, dude, like at nationals, right? There was this guy. I think his name is God. I can't remember his name, but he's from Puerto Rico, and he was at Carry Optics Nationals, and his SRO flung his front lens out like a football
mhm.
in the middle of the stage, and so he didn't have a backup, and never had met the guy before, nothing like that. Like this random dude in our squad was like, "Do you want to shoot my backup gun?" Um, like I don't know any other place where somebody is just going to hand you a $2,000 piece of equipment and be like, "Hey, do you want to use this?" Like for the remainder of this high round count match, like because I was even thinking about offering him mine, but I was shooting X5 Legions at the time, and I would have been like, I think this is too big of a switch up for you. But he could have done it. Like I would have offered it to him. It's just somebody else happened to have a shadow.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, and the holster probably would have been a pain in the butt, but
yeah, yeah,
mhm.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know
No,
how
there's
you know
there's
how
too
they love
many
the rules.
rules. Yeah, but it definitely um, there's definitely all the good people in this sport, right? They'll give you a shirt off their back. They'll hand you ammo that costs you a shit ton of money nowadays. I do ask like a jackass since I shoot open now. I'm like, will you shoot my ammo through your gun? Will you shoot my ammo through your gun? But it's made by Outdoor Dynamics, so it's fantastic ammunition. Make sure you use the code
Yeah,
Manny. We're gonna use my code Manny, 5% off.
nice.
If his website's back up and working, I haven't checked. Speaking of that, I gotta
He
look.
says it is. He was just running a sale the other day. John's another good one. I was B class when I started talking to John, and I met him and I had shot his ammo like once before, and it was pretty good. And all I literally said to him when I met him at the 2022 Area 6 match was like, "Hey man, like I liked your ammo, it's good stuff." And he was like, "Thanks, man." Started talking. He loves puppies. I love puppies. Um, so he was showing me pictures of his dog. I was showing him pictures of my dog at the time, both yellow labs, and started talking with him more. And I had just made A class, um, and I was unemployed at the time. And I was like, I really want to shoot your. And he so eventually, like, he just was like, you know what, screw it, like, be on the team. Um, like, dude just gave me a chance out of nowhere. One I really didn't deserve, if I'm being honest, compared to other people. But I guess it's just being nice to somebody and loving puppies goes a long way. So
Yeah. As we talked in the pre-show, all dogs are puppies.
all dogs are puppies. Okay. All
Unless,
dogs are
yep,
puppies. And if anybody out there disagrees, you're wrong. They can be 12 years old and dying and they're still a puppy.
yep. I will say the only classification I will give other than a puppy is a horse, and that's like the giant dogs that are legitimately like mini horses. But no, they are all
Dude,
puppies.
I used to live in a neighborhood where this lady had a Chesapeake Lab and a Great Dane, and the
Hmm.
Chesapeake Lab would like be sprinting, and the Great Dane would be like trotting next to it, and it looked like a horse trotting. Like it was barely even moving, and it was just keeping up, like gliding effortlessly through the air. That's how big this freaking dog was.
Yeah, God, and I've Great Danes are. I grew up around a Great Dane. Those tails are literally a razor's whip. Like they will beat you. Now think about it. You're a 6 or 7 year old child. Your head is at tail level with a Great Dane, and you will be pummeled by this tail because it is excited to see you. I never regret growing up with that dog, like in my life, but I would have bruises in my like, and my parents had just around that time probably they had gotten divorced, so I was going back and forth. So when my dad would see me, he'd be like, "What the fuck happened to you?" The dog. Well, it was my aunt's dog, but beside the point. It's like we were over at the house. Yeah, it was bad. I loved that dog. That dog, that was a good dog. Even he was a big, them big oafs that but no,
Big Oaks are the best kind of dogs.
they are. Well, mine's just a spoiled. My corgi's just a spoiled brat. He knows it
Oh,
too.
corgis are good dogs too. I love corgis.
Oh, definitely. They are great. But he will literally get out of his crate, like because we crate him when we're gone. He'll get out of his crate and he'll flop onto his back and put his paws up like this, and be like belly rubs. He's like, I'm not moving until I get a belly rub or a treat. Like there's two currencies in this world, treats and belly rubs.
Yeah. Yeah, Obi used to do the same thing. He would well Obi would, I don't know about you, but uh my dog, ex's dog, she got to keep it. He used to sleep with me, and like he would literally like lay on top of me. So like he would jump up on the bed and then lay on top of me and just go to sleep that way. So I've got like multiple pictures on my phone of him just laying on me and him falling asleep on me. And I'm just like, yeah, this is fine. Like, don't mind me underneath of here or whatever. And then meanwhile, he's just laying on top of me like,
Mm-hmm.
such a good dog.
Mm-hmm. Good dogs. Dogs are always good. I just
Oh,
wish I could take my dog to the range because I spend so much time at the range.
yeah, dogs don't really like loud noises like that. There was
Mm-hmm.
a lady at Fredericksburg, because Fredericksburg, Virginia has like a tactical crowd that comes. Um, and I think it's because Quantico is so close. But they have a tactical crowd that comes, and this one lady came, and she had a German Shepherd that had like a tactical vest, harness, but then it had like goggles and earmuffs, which
Mm-hmm.
I thought was kind of cool. But obviously, like that dog has been around loud noises before. Because my dog, it wouldn't matter if I put earmuffs on him; like he would still go like shit his pants and hide under the bed.
Yeah, exactly. Fireworks are around the 4th of July is a nightmare around here.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's especially we live in town, so it's like ugh. But see, dogs and shooting go together. It's like Great America and apple pie, right? Like
Yeah,
now, all you cat people, it's not that I don't like you. Just no, dogs are better.
dogs are infinitely better. That's what. There's some cat people like Wes Cronin. He's a cat guy,
Hmm.
and he doesn't like. I'm just like, why are you a cat guy? And he's like, I like cats. I'm like, he doesn't. I guess like he's a little bit quieter of a guy, but
Hmm. He can shoot
I don't
too, though.
understand
Like
it.
him and Hempel can
Oh,
trade. Like them, they can trade. Like watching them shoot, because what they all both shoot. I know West posts "We suck at shooting" or something on that page as well.
yeah. Wes runs You Suck at Shooting.
Hmm.
That is his training company, because he is a trainer by trade for a living for the feds, but that's his day job. Um, and they used to both shoot CZs. Hempel then got picked up by IWI, and he shoots a Jericho, which according to Hempel is like a Tanfo and a CZ had a baby, and that's what a Jericho is.
And then you got to
So
figure out which parts from which gun go in the thing.
yeah, pretty much. So like I know Cajun works on it, and then of course Hempel learned some stuff when he had his SPO ones shadows, which they don't make anymore. But that was Hempel's gun of choice. Um, but he learned a lot from that. Cronin likes his Shadow 2s too much, and I think that's just because he knows he can go out and buy one bone stock, and he doesn't really have to screw with it too much.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, which was funny enough. Speaking of the Jericho, my wife was fortunate enough to win a from Hunters HD Gold. They did the Gold Cup series, so she won on a giveaway for an IWI Masada Slim. Well, unfortunately, IWI doesn't have any Masada Slims right now. But so the guy got back. Jeremy Grisham got back to us and was like, "So this is what I have," and I'm like, I don't want to be a dick because I don't want to make them give you a Jericho and then I would send it off to get milled and you would never shoot this gun. So she ended up. I think she's getting a regular. She's getting like a regular Masada. So
So, I mean, those are really underrated guns. The Masada Slims, like I actually got to shoot one and was extremely impressed. And that's the thing, like IWI is like one of those sleeper companies.
yeah,
Like everybody knows them for the Tavor and the Galil, but um, their rifle is like the Delaware State Police's rifle, and that's the SWAT's rifle and everything else like that. They make all the stuff in house, so like people think like it's funny to me because like they'll say like it's a budget AR, but it's really not. I think IWI is just trying to build a good rifle and bring it to the market at like a slightly cheaper price. Um, because I've shot those guns before. I own an LWRC. That's my only 5.56 gun. That's my only AR in general. And I bought that because I live in the grand state of Maryland, and LWRC is made in Maryland, so it's an easy workaround for all the stupid Maryland laws. Like chances are, this Maryland company is going to follow Maryland laws to sell to Maryland civilians.
mm-hmm.
Um, IWI came in a little bit too late, but I was actually looking at buying one point. And I've always been impressed by those. And you see dudes like Kitzmiller, Matt Kitzmiller, and George Dorbert run it, and Rick Torres, and there's a couple other people I can't think of. Greg Jordan, you see them run them, and I'm like, yo, that's a good gun. I don't think, and people always overlook them because they're like, oh, you got to get your Sons of Liberty. Sons of Liberty's cool, but I don't always have $1,800 to spend on a gun.
Just the
Um,
rifle, and then you got to put glass on it and buy other
yeah,
crap. And
yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. The lifetime warranty through Sons of Liberty is cool, and then you can always say that you have a Sons of Liberty. But
mm-hmm.
I feel like most people don't ever really use those lifetime warranties because they're always replacing parts and everything else like that themselves. And like, oh, I put this rail on today and everything else like that. So it's just,
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah, and that's the hard part too. Is like I'm too much of a tinker, but I'm also like if once it's set, like I haven't messed with my open gun. Right, I got it from the builder. I shot it. I just shoot it. Right. I don't piddle dink with it. It's like if it works, it works. Right. And that's what people get that tinkering mindset too much, and I'm just like, trust the guy who built it or you bought it from. Like they kind of know what they're doing. They put the rail on there for a reason. They put the trigger in it that they want in it because they know what they're doing. I mean, unless it's a crappy mil spec trigger, then you might have to change it, depending on the company.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I've learned more and more as I've gotten into it. Because that's actually how I ended up with a freaking that's how I ended up with the Legion, which I've even graduated from the Legion. But I had a Glock 17 at first, and I was like, I'm going to make this a quote unquote duty gun slash competition gun. And by the time I got done screwing with it, the only original part of the original Glock that was left was like the grip. Like, and that was it. And then like I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, like, you run into that thing where like all of a sudden it's just not reliable anymore. But then I was shooting my Legion more at the time, um, and now I'm on the gray guns kick because
Mm-hmm.
reasons. But that's the one thing I've learned is that like you people try to make stuff into like quasi stuff by tinkering with it. Oh, I'll give this a better trigger, and that'll make it better for competition. And like the real answer is like no, like build stuff purpose built. That's one of the biggest lessons I've learned in USPSA. Purpose built things are built for a reason, and you should adhere to those reasons because other than that, you're doing like the best of both worlds. But they call it a jack of all trades, not really the best at anything. So like, therefore, guess what? Like, you're not really going to be the best at anything because you have a piece of equipment that wasn't really built for the thing that you're doing with it. But
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Well, and two like so the wife's Legion carry that we bought, super cool is that the slide it was one of the generational slides that had the RMR holes in it. So
yeah,
SRO went straight onto it. I was like, yes, don't have to get a plate. I still could have gotten the plate, but I was able to direct mill it into direct mount it into the gun, which is awesome. The only thing other than that I've done to that gun is the fact that I've knocked off the front sight and then put a DMP or DPM recoil reduction kit or whatever, because
mm,
the gun was just too oversprung. My wife I could barely rack the darn thing from the front. And she's got way less grip strength than I do, so we put the lightest spring in it, and it cycles outdoor dynamics librarians just fine. So we're good to go there.
just out of curiosity. So does that Legion carry come with a stainless guide rod?
No, I think it's just a regular polymer guide rod. So that gun is a 3.9 inch barrel with threads on it, so it's like a 4.5 or a 4.5 inch barrel.
So it's not
It's
hang on
not
real
it.
quick.
It's well, it might be stainless, but it's all one piece. It's like a captured guide rod.
Right. Okay. So then that's the bone stock guide rod from SIG.
Yes.
Um, I was going to say, if you go out and get, so what I found across the board, and I have a gun, because reasons, um, but the gray guns, stainless guide rod, and they actually make them even coated in nitride too, but it doesn't matter. But it's still a piece of stainless steel that you can get coated. Um, Same difference. This one's just not coated. If you get this, and then you get 1911 recoil springs. Now I know it's like a 3.9 inch
Mm-hmm.
P320. So I think at that point you can use commander length springs. You'll have to talk to Jordan or Keith at Gray Guns about it, um, about like what they recommend. But I know ever since I switched over to 1911 recoil springs and like messing with them and everything else like that, like yeah, you're right. The P320s for the most part, the factory uh, recoil guide rod is really oversprung. Even Bruce Gray says that. Bruce Gray is like, I think it's oversprung. So that's why all of his stuff, even his like competition uppers, they actually come with these, and then they come with 15-pound recoil springs. And those 15-pound recoil springs are actually for like duty law enforcement ammo. So like Spear Gold Dot, like plus P's, stuff like that. 14s are like a little bit better for like reliable cycling of like Blazer and all that sort of stuff. And 12 and a halfs are good for like your competition loads. But honestly, I just run 12 and a halfs across the board, except for this one's a 14, but this is a new quote. Remember how I was talking about like quote unquote duty builds?
Mm-hmm.
That's what this is. It's show it off here real quick because why the hell not? So this, if I can get it back together here, this is and I'll let you look at it so you can see it's empty, nothing in there. But I got this. So the lower is from a company called Brower,
Mm-hmm.
and it actually makes it very 1911 esque. And it's just an M17 FCU, which I didn't even want at first, but I got a certificate from JJ Ricasa, and because I live in Maryland, they wouldn't send me a normal P320; they would send me an M17. So like whatever. So I sold the M17 upper and lower off. But then this slide is from Gray Guns, and this thing's actually really cool because it's not a bull barrel slide.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's just a normal P320 slide, but then they sent it with their fancy little guide rod, which is stainless. And the reason it's stainless is because this barrel is the stock barrel from the M17. I haven't shot it yet. It's just in here for me screwing around with it purposes.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to get a KKM barrel, so it's going to be stainless. So it's going to be stainless on stainless because I like two tone. I'm old school like that.
Right.
I also like 1911s, like 2011 looks, but like I don't. I haven't switched over to that game yet. But I just like the way that Gray Guns cuts their slides and everything else like that. But the reason behind me saying that again is like ever since I switched over to the recoil, like this gun, I don't consider it oversprung because like yeah, stock P320s, oof. Like I don't it's like Canic, man. Those Canic rivals, that shit was oversprung out of the box. I remember shooting that and being like, oof, like oh my god, you can feel the slide just slamming back into the barrel on
Mm-hmm.
recoil. It was like oh my god. So that's why everybody with the Canics, they take it out, put a tungsten guide rod in it, and like run like Colt Commander length springs, 1911 Commander like springs, and like that seems to fix it.
Right. Well, that's now that Bauer, does that feel so? Your regular P320 Legion grip, it's kind of chunky when you get it in the top, near the beaver tail, right?
So
Is
I
that
know
less
what you're getting at.
chunky?
Yeah. So this thing actually, if I'm being honest, at first, um, I did not like it
Mm-hmm.
at first. And the reason is because the stock one, so they actually sent me two. Full disclosure, they sent me two for free. Um, and I do have a slight relationship with those guys. I talk to Josh Bennett of Broward pretty regularly. Josh Bennett is another fantastic human being. Not that many people buy these things, that shoot USPSA, and they still support USPSA because they want to get their name out there and they want to give back to the shooting community. And that in and of itself is awesome. Um, Josh Bennett doesn't run the company, but Josh is like kind of the face of the company. Um, Josh was in the Green Beret for a while, and he served for a long time, and he's taken some shit for this country. Um, and he's an amazing person. I mean, like that dude is a very dangerous human being, but he's got a heart of gold. Um, but they reached out to me asking me about these, and I just like the way that they looked because I like old school Americana things. They sent me two. So the stock one, I'm going to tell you right now. These were developed for DoD. They were not ever meant to be um, for competition purposes. So the stock one is smooth because most of the people that they were intending it to be for were going to be putting these on M17s and M18s, and they were probably going to be shooting with gloves. So that takes out the whole, it's too smooth. When I got it and I was dry firing with it, like it was falling out of my hands. The other thing is with a normal P320 barrel model, so like not the bull barrel, but the normal P320, it's more balanced, which is huge. Like this thing is perfectly balanced with a slightly loaded mag in it. And I've actually got a mag somewhere in here for dry fire with dummy rounds, but this thing's great. I don't like it for the bull barrel models. Now that being said, when they were talking to me, I suggested to them Josh Cardenas, and that's how Josh Cardenas got to start shooting for them because I was like, hey, you should go talk to these guys, blah blah blah. Now Josh took like what 25th at Carry Optics Nationals last year, and he did it with this grip module and a bull barrel P320 upper. And so like clearly balance doesn't matter to Josh. Like he did just fine with it, and he loves this thing.
Right, and he's mostly a PCC shooter.
Yeah, mostly, but he is a Carry Optics GM. But other than that, like this thing, like that's just my gripe with it. You can use it to devastatingly good effect, like Josh did. And like when I tell people, I'm like, here's my opinion on it, but you should go look at this guy. Now, I will say this: I don't have one yet. They make a magwell for this, and the magwell is like probably like 5 ounces of steel that sits on the bottom of this. With the bull barrel P320 uppers from Gray Guns, it balances it out. It takes like all the balance out of it. So this combo, perfectly viable limited optics setup. Maybe not this one because it's got an RMR on it because again, duty. But perfectly viable limited optics setup, and even it's just fine for carry optics too, as long as you're okay having a little bit nose heavy of a gun. But I will say this: the other thing for this, I have never been able to reload as fast with the normal P320 TXG grip modules as I have with this. Like this thing is significantly lighter, but even without an extended mag release, I've never been able to reload as fast. Like I posted on my story me dry firing with this exact grip module, and I was easily getting sub-second reloads on that store on that Instagram, like showing people what I do for dry fire using Dry Fire King. And this thing is they weren't kidding. Like they published data online saying that like we shoot better with it, we reload better with it. The shooting part, unfortunately, I didn't put that many rounds through it, but I dry fired with it a lot, and I can tell you right now, like this thing, I've never been able to reload that fast. I'm talking like the new mag was in and the gun was pointed up before the old one even hit the floor.
Feel kind of like Travis Tomasi at that point.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's how it felt. And the TXG, it's actually funny because me and another guy that's heavily connected with SIG, we're talking about this last night. I'm not going to say who because it'll probably get him in trouble. But he was like, the TXG is objectively not a good grip, like because it's too small for people with small hands, but it's also too big for people with big hands. So like it's fat and skinny in all the wrong places. So now actually Brower came out with that new steel grip module, which is at SHOT Show right now, and I'm kind of interested to take a look at that. Just to try it. I know he's sending a couple of test modules out, not to me, but to a couple of guys that deserve it definitely more than I do. Because they're going to try to get those onto the market and try to make a name for themselves with that. And I know Mischief Machine is making one. It's not steel, but I might as well show it off. So this is my EDC.
Hmm.
It's just, and this is in my Instagram too. It's just started its life as a 365 macro, and I took the macro slide off because it doesn't actually do anything for you in terms of recoil compensation, believe it or not. But we'll talk about that later.
Hmm.
And then I had a macro lower, so this has the 17 round mags. This is from Mischief Machine, and that's just an aluminum lower for your P365, and it's got grip panels on the front and on the back, and it's got nice texturing on the front. Um, and this thing, I can tell you right now, this thing is beautiful. It actually, so two guys I was at the range with, I was practicing, they both conceal carry CZ75s, just bone stock CZ75s. They thought this shot and recoil better than their CZ75. And we're talking about like a heavier handgun that weighs more, that holds less rounds, and they thought this shot better just because of this grip module. So telling you that because Mischief Machine also makes an aluminum P320 sized one. There's not that many out there yet because he's a one-man operation, but he's a trained, competent machinist. Pumps them out of his garage, and you can get them done in any color you want because he works with a Cerakoter, local Cerakoter in his area, and he also works with Lock Grips. Lock Grips is actually the people who make these grip panels. So they're going to start coming out with brass ones soon for that aluminum grip module that he's making. But I want to feel that one because if it's anything like this, like Joe Potter does some good work over at Mischief Machine. So
Hmm.
it's one of those things of, plus, like ever since I put them on, like the macro lower, it wasn't bad, but I can tell you right now, like I haven't shot iron sights in a while, and this thing points so naturally, and that's the benefit to the Brower too. This thing points so naturally. Um, it feels like cheating. Like the TXG, like it points pretty naturally, but you kind of got to get used to it. Meanwhile, I pick up this.
Hmm.
I didn't have to dry fire with it that much, and I can just pick it up, point it, and like the sights are there. Um, for anybody that owns a P320, I heavily recommend checking this out because that is the benefit to this. This is only $90. The Mischief Machine lower is like 400.
Right. It's about the
This
same
this
cost
P,
as what a TXG grip, isn't it?
it's actually more expensive. TXG
Wow.
grips are like $200
Well, so I mean, it's
on
worth
a
it,
good
right?
day.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah,
worth it because it's actually made of metal, not just
yeah.
metal infused into plastic, which I
But
don't
again,
argue
like
that.
if you want to if you want to tech this, like you can. This is a fantastic grip.
Hmm.
I just, in my personal opinion, think it's better suited for non-bowl barrel P320s, which is what it was designed for, and that's why they made the steel grip module. That's why Brower's making the steel grip module because they're like, yeah, like things are meant to be purpose built. You can't take something that was built for something else and apply it and expect it to work out the same. So,
Right. Not everything is drop and go.
what? Just out of curiosity, what trigger did your wife end up putting in her P320?
I have not done anything about her trigger yet. So last night, funny enough, last night she shot her first USPSA match
Okay,
with it. So she did pretty well. She kept her grip's a little funky, so she kept dropping the magazine out with a regular normal mag release, surprisingly. But we're gonna get that fixed. But I didn't put a trigger in it yet, but it definitely it needs some love. That thing, especially for her, especially with her so new to shooting pistols, right? I think she's only shot a pistol 4 times, like four
right.
different sessions. So those new pistol skills definitely are showing. But
If you want to, um, personally, I wouldn't recommend changing anything on her gun until she gets to a point where it matters.
mhm.
But something that you can do that will probably make her a happier person. Um, the trigger return spring at the front or at the rear of the trigger bar. You can
Mhm.
Google it after, but ISMI makes one that's plus 10% return,
Mhm.
meaning that it gives it about a 10% increase in the return. So basically, when it's coming back, like that part right there, it just gives it a little bit more oomph to it because
Mhm.
P320 resets are pretty lazy. Um,
Yep. Hmm.
if you want to, you can get her a plus 10%. It's like $5 from ISMI's website. And that actually does wonders because what it does is it adds a little bit more of a wall. Um, it makes the trigger about half a pound more. But again, for somebody who's got new pistol skills, it's that half a pound isn't going to make any difference.
Right.
And eventually, you'll get a point to a point. Like that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm at a point where I'm finding out that a lot of bone stock triggers are just fine. You really
Hmm.
don't have to change much on some of them. Like I found out the hard way that yeah, that Timney Glock trigger is really nice, but I probably could have done the same thing with a freaking better connector than what I had in it, and in a different trigger return spring.
Speaking of Timney triggers, right? So I have a Gen 5. It was my main squeeze for carry optics. Uh, I don't know how much work I ended up having to do to that gun to get it to be reliable reset and not be a piece of poop. I literally had to cut the awesome, dual sided not mag release, but a slide release. I lopped that bitch off, and I was like, well, it's gonna be like a Gen 4. But guess what? My gun worked again. Like,
People had problems with those. I never had a single problem. I don't. That's sad. I'm sorry to hear that.
well, and the trigger was nice. I mean, the gun was good. It like the trigger was phenomenal in that gun after that, but it just there was so much you had to worry about. Disconnector angles, and it was just it's like because you could leave everything factory. You put a Timney in it, and then you got to figure out the angle of your disconnector or all this crap. It's just like Lord have mercy.
Yeah. Well, that was. I mean, the two failing points of that trigger. The trigger return spring was kind of like a CZ.
Hmm.
And when they first started making those, it wasn't strong enough. And so when I bought mine, I actually bought it straight from the factory, like 6 months after they released.
Hmm.
So I bought mine straight from the factory. So it took a month for me to get there. A lot of people bought theirs from retail outlets, and uh, they hadn't figured out yet what was going on. So when I got mine from the factory, they had figured it out. I didn't have that problem, and a bunch of people were like, "Oh, that trigger sucks." Blah blah blah. Turns out, like they had to come out with a heavier trigger return spring because for a lot of people, it just wasn't activating. And the other part of that is the trigger mechanism itself sat inside a Glock factory trigger housing. So like you had to rip all the guts of the original Glock one out, stick the Timney one in because it basically turned it into a P320. And then the only thing holding in that upper mechanism with the cruciform was this tiny little screw that I kid you not had like two threads on it.
Yep.
Um, and that's what you have to screw into the bottom. And the part that Timney, like they were like, "Oh, put Loctite on it." Well, like you got two threads. Like, come on, man. Like, so after like 1,000 rounds, I would find myself having to pull that out because what would happen is it would loosen up and the cruciform would come up higher. And as the cruciform would come up higher, like the sear would sit on the back and it would get up so high that it would drag across the top of the cruciform. Well, if you got enough friction on metal, there's no amount of striker spring strength that can take away friction. And I was getting light strikes. And once I started figured that out and went back in and was just like, okay, you need to pull this out, rescrew it, set it back in, the light strike stopped. Well, it's a Glock, right? It's not meant to frickin' you should never have light strikes in a Glock ever. Like
Hmm.
if you have light strikes in a Glock, you have done something seriously wrong. So that's when I ripped it out. I had a Vogel trigger from Glock Triggers at the time, which all that is just a polished trigger with an over travel stop to it, and that's what I put in it, and that's what I finished out the life of that thing with. And I tell anybody now, um, like I felt the new performance triggers from Glock. I don't think I would ever like the only thing I would probably do if I ever shot Glock again, maybe, is do an Apex trigger. And even then, that's a strong maybe because like I learned my lesson the hard way, man. Like don't mess with the Glock. Like you know, change out the mag release if you want to, maybe. But other than that, and all the god awful factory sites. But other than that, just leave it alone.
Hmm. What did I end up? I ended up putting I think a brass grip plug in it to put some
Yep, those
ads.
work too.
You had to I think I got that from the Glock store. I put a pure tungsten guide rod from the Glock store in it because might as well, right? And then I
Yeah.
silicon carb. No, well, I put vicious grip tape, which is horrible for shredding your hands, but it really good to sticking to your hands. And
Yeah.
then that Timney trigger.
Yeah.
But I don't regret I don't regret doing the mods to it, other than the fact that as soon as I got the Timney to work, it was fine. But before then, it was just like, oh my lord. Try taking that out to your first match back of the season and be like, oh, my gun's going to work great. And then you shit the bed because your gun croaks on the first 2 stages and you've lost all the points. It's just like,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's, it's just one of those things. The more you screw with your gun, like on some level, it's like, there's something to be said for adding simple fixes, but like people try to tinker too much. And it's like, you see these people that tinker. It's like, just shoot your gun, like replace it with as close to stock parts as you can get and just shoot your gun. And like, if you are going to replace it with stuff like that ISMI spring, like ISMI has a reputation for making good springs. And like all you're doing by adding a slightly heavier spring in, it's like plus 10%. It's not going to matter. Because SIG's got their own problem with making springs. So it's always good to go for a reliable spring company because SIG's got, man, it's like, I tell people like, hey man, if you're going to replace your springs on your SIG, like ISMI is a good way to go.
right.
Because they got their own little things that they need to worry about.
True that. But so we've kind of gone down this rabbit hole, which I am a-okay with going down this rabbit hole. But I guess it was like we talked about getting into shooting. We've been talking about guns for this whole time. But do you have any current goals in shooting for yourself, or?
Oh yeah, I said this on Dave's podcast and Dave Casual Shooter, and I'll say it again here. I have every intention on being first place on the national podium. I have every intention on sitting there with the first place, and respectfully beating everyone that's there currently. I have every intention on getting there. It might take me a minute, but I have every intention on getting there. So it's just that's something I've wanted to do since I was a kid. And it doesn't even matter the division to me, like carry optics, limited production, if it's still around. Open, like it doesn't matter to me. I want to win, and I want to be recognized as like an SME and somebody that's like, hey, like that Robert Hewins guy, like yeah, I do. That's my goal for this.
Well, and that's pretty awesome. Some people, everyone's got their own goals and how they come at this, so that's really cool to see that you have that goal. And I hope you make it there because it takes dedication, practice, hard work. Did I say dedication? But yeah, dedication. It takes double dedication because you've got to do everything right. You don't see super fat people being national champions because, well, one, we don't have one right now, but because they're all freaking bean poles. I mean, especially when you count Nils, who's really tall for everybody else, and he's really skinny, so he accommodates out like, yeah, it's always good. But so what are you doing actively to get to that goal? Like, what does your training look like?
Well, so here's the thing. Both my guns are out of Gray Guns. Going back into the gun talk, I shoot Gray Guns Modern Classic uppers. Those guns are getting rebarreled right now because, in my professional opinion, SIG makes iffy barrels that aren't very good in terms of reliability and durability. I shouldn't even say reliability, durability. So they're getting rebarreled at Gray Guns for Faxon barrels. Once those are done, those are going to get sent for trigger work to Dan Feltyberger at Sussex Gun Works, who makes one of the best P320 triggers on the market, if you're willing to pay. Luckily, Dan's going to sponsor me, so that's nice. And yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
If you're listening to the audio, I'm making it rain back over here.
So Dan's going to sponsor me. So I'm probably not going to get my guns back until like mid-February, which is fine. And the present moment, like I took from October off. I put all my guns away. I shot the Virginia State match, ended the year out on kind of a poopy note, but I put my guns away and I need some time off. I figured that out. Like you can't burn yourself out. And originally I was going to be like, I'm going to wait until January. And then after talking to a gentleman I very heavily respect, his name is Patches Reader.
I love Patches.
Yeah.
Patches is the shit, and
So
his baby is adorable.
yes, him and Bill Drummond both are of the mindset of just like, dude, you got to take breaks, and it's got to be like, football, hockey, everybody else, they take like 3 to 4 to 5 month breaks. Like, why shouldn't you?
Hmm.
Um, that being said, I'm getting back into dry fire a little bit, which is why I have this fellow with me, because it's not my carry or my it's not my competition pistols, but it's it's something. So I'm using that in Dry Fire King. But right now it's like, 30 minutes of dry fire a day using Dry Fire King because that's what I do. Um, and live rounds, yeah, I can't do this week because I'm on vacation, but try to get to the range once a week and put 50 rounds down range, just, working on basic core fundamental skills, making sure I can still ride that bicycle. Um, Once the season opens up mid-February, once I get my guns back, it's back to dry firing for 2 hours a night. Um, I'm dry firing for 2 hours a night, and I'm live firing once a week. So it's that's the plan, and then shooting a match on the weekend.
That's a good plan. I mean, honestly, I kind of agree with Bill and Patches. You do need to take an off season. My off season has been kind of a weird regimented thing where I'll just kind of do things as I feel like it. So no real pressure, just kind of keep everything, fluid and whatnot. But it's not like once a week. It's not like once or twice a day I got to go down and do my 15 to 30 minutes of dry fire. It's like, oh, it's Thursday. I'm gonna go downstairs because I feel like I want to go touch my guns, and
Yeah,
that's kind of how my off season rolls. But it's weird for me because this is the first winter I've been able to shoot through the winter and actually shoot matches because we have an indoor club that's like an hour from my house. So, which has kept the competitiveness up with me, so I don't feel like so I go back outside, I'm going to be super rusty or dull. I'll be able to just ride the lightning.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, no, so that's cool. And I agree. Messing around with other guns, right? Like you're not really playing with your competition guns because they're gone. But you're still keeping it. You're not horribly, losing everything. Because everyone says,
yeah.
pistol shooting is an appreciable skill. Kind of is, but as long as you do the fundamentals and keep everything fine, it'll be okay.
Well, I mean, I still twice a month go to the range and practice with this because there's no dot on this. There's just irons. Um,
How do you use the
and
bumpy
I'm
things?
I actually I actually took. You'll laugh at this. I took an NRA pistol instructor's certification class over the weekend, um, and all the issues aside with that, because we can go on for days about that. But
Hmm.
part of the thing was like put a pie plate up at 15 yards and shoot it, and then like shoot it slowly so I can critique you from behind and tell you what you're doing wrong. Okay. So I pull my carry gun out and I'm like, bang, 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 like slow, consistent pace, and like all my hits were in the center of this pie plate at like 15 yards with this irons. And the lady was just like, it was like the scene from Lethal Weapon where they're like, have a nice day. Like she was just kind of like, what the hell, do you sleep with that thing? I was like, no, you just got to go to the range and practice. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be your exact handgun. It just has to be close enough that it fits in and coincides with. And that's why, again, appreciate the guys at Brower because this thing is great. Um,
Hmm.
Once I get back with my TXGs, and I might be shooting, depending upon, I might be shooting something, a newer grip module this year for my P320s, but we'll see. We'll
Hmm.
see if all that plays out with whoever is talking to me right now about potentially giving me more free stuff. So,
Right. Well, yeah, I got to get the free stuff, right? But no,
yeah.
speaking of Dan Feltyberg, he'll be, I'm recording with him next week from today.
Oh, Dan's the man.
Yep. Because I got to talk to him
Dan,
about it.
oh,
Go ahead.
sorry, go ahead. No, you.
Well, I got to talk to him because I got to figure out how he did with a 2011 at nationals last year at Open Nationals,
Eh,
but not to bust his balls about his gun, but that's sad because I wanted to see how that thing really would do, his Open 320 would do. So
well, he's done with Open 320s, and he's actually, just for your informational purposes and all the viewers, um, Dan, in my opinion, makes the best competition P320 trigger on the market. Um, and I can say that because I've tried it, and it's low and like it's so far away from everything else. Everybody else, like there's different purposes to different ones. Like So like Gray Guns makes a really good trigger. Don't get me wrong. It's just that trigger is a slightly tweaked quote unquote duty trigger, because if you go to Gray Guns and you ask them about that trigger still maintains all the internal safeties of P320. Dan's actually takes ones away because it's only ever going to get used for USPSA. And that's what he tells people, like, this is only ever to be used in a competition setting. So it doesn't matter. And actually, the safety that it is, in order to make this thing fire, you have to pull this back until it hits this wall. Like, and there's two walls to this. So you're going to hit your first wall, and your first wall is actually what makes the striker's safety spring push up, and that's what allows the striker to go forward. So contrary to popular belief, these things cannot go off by themselves.
Right.
But you're going to hit your first wall, and that's what's going to make your striker safety go up. Your second wall, your striker safety has gone up, and now your sear is being pulled down from your safety sear is being pulled down from your striker sear, and that's what makes the gun go bang. Dan's trigger eliminates the original. It eliminates the original first wall, so you're basically sitting on the second wall, which it's not meant for duty. Gray Guns is more meant for duty. There's the Apex, which isn't bad. It's just kind of, I don't like it. That's just personal preference. It's not that they make a bad trigger by any means. It's kind of impressive. It's just not for me. There's other ones out there, but Dan's across the board is, in my opinion, the best competition P320 trigger that you can get. And he's just started messing around with Shadow 2s. But all that to say, he is getting away from open P320s because he's realizing what we've talked about this. Purpose-built things are meant to be purpose-built. I don't think the P320 was ever meant to be an open gun. I don't think the 1911 was ever meant to be an open gun, but they completely redesigned what it was supposed to be and made all new parts in order to make it into that, as opposed to an open P320 is stock P320 parts that were never meant to be an open gun that had been reconfigured into making an open gun.
Mm-hmm.
So he's on the 2011 kick now for open with 38 Super Comp because Dan's rich. So,
Right, for what he charges for triggers, might as well be, right?
yeah, well, that's the other thing too. With Dan's prices, you're paying for all the time that Dan has ever spent investigating P320 triggers. I mean, that man is so smart. There's a SIG shooter that when he has questions about the P320, he doesn't call SIG engineers, he goes to Dan.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm not going to name that who that is, but that's just like that should tell you something, that Dan is that smart. Dan Feltyberger is legitimately one of the smartest people I've ever met in my entire life. Like, the guy is just eons above the rest of us and doesn't even skip a beat. Like, meanwhile, he's talking my ear off about metallurgy, and I'm just looking at him like I'm a 12-year-old. Like, what?
Mm-hmm. And that's really good because all the listeners are going to hear it from Dan after this episode, because you guys will be back to back on episodes, which will be cool. Not planned at all. No, really, not planned, but it worked out for me, I guess.
Yeah, Dan, if you're hearing this, I love you.
I'll make sure just to send him that part, right? Clip it out there. Oh, that's too funny.
Exactly.
But what else? Let's see. I've got a couple more questions. So what does your normal schedule look like for matches? Do you shoot one local a month, two a month, or is it all kind of depend?
So I'm in grad school right now. Long story short, my career's kind of been all over the place, not by choice. Just kind of the luck of the Irish. Not really Irish, but it's kind of been all over the place. So I decided to go back to grad school. I have an engineering degree, and I'm going back for a master's in business administration just to increase my worth in the job market and decrease my chances of ever getting laid off ever again. So that doesn't end until June, which is why I'm okay going to Area 8, and that's why I'm okay going to Carry Optics Nationals this year. I didn't go last year because grad school, and I was unemployed. But grad school comes first, so I'm going to do my damnedest to make sure that I want my A. If I'm paying $20,000 out of pocket to go to grad school, I'm getting my freaking A.
Mm-hmm.
So I can tell people I have an MBA and I got a 4.0 because that's where I'm sitting right now. That comes first. That being said, I usually go to matches once a week, if
Okay.
not twice a week. Um, it depends upon how much I can afford, though. With ammo being the way that it is right now, I'm gonna get into reloading. I finally made that decision because ammo was just being stupid. Luckily, I'm sitting on enough rounds to get me through the season, but 10,000 rounds of 9 millimeter doesn't cost $1,500 anymore.
Right.
So
No, it definitely is not cheap anymore.
yeah, yeah. So that's the I try to go to one match, if not two matches a week, um, and matches that are worth your time too. Not to say that there's any matches that aren't worth your time, but like matches that are going to push you and you can take something away from and be like, okay, what do I need to practice on this week?
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's a lot of things. I still don't know, believe this for myself is the fact of using a match to, as practice. I know Anderson talks about if you're using it as practice, how are you going to practice competing at the same time? But which I think is much more of a better skill than, oh, I'm going to try to do this, this weird technique throughout the whole match and make it okay, because it never seems to have to work out for people. Because when I hear people, oh, I'm going to do this on all these targets, and it's like, okay, I'm going to just shoot.
Matches are not practice. Like they are and there aren't. Matches are practice for nationals, like keeping your calm and your composure, but that's it. Like all the fundamentals and everything else, you should be practicing on your own. You should be dry firing because there's no excuse. Like, like people, I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but I had a significant skill increase in 2023. And that all started happening because I was consistently dry firing and I was started figuring out how to dry fire. I had read Steve Anderson's book and some people had sent me some other people's drills. But if you use Dry Fire King, like it literally makes you work on the three big things that you need to work on for USPSA, which is weapon presentation, transitions, reloads. If you can do everything else moderately well, like if you're like a slightly okay accuracy shooter, like Tanfo Timmy is probably the best example of this. Tanfo Timmy is like, dude, I can't group and I'm not that great at build drills. But meanwhile, Tanfo Timmy came in like what? I think he came in 19th place at 2022 Carry Optics Nats. Um, you know, and then there's a guy like Lane Grease. Lane Grease is the perfect example because Lane will even tell you to your face. He's like, dude, I'm a boring shooter. And if you watch his match footage, he is boring. But that dude came in 9th place just from being super efficient and super good at weapon presentation, transitions, reloads. And if you do everything else with a modicum of reliability, like you're going to smoke. And Dry Fire King and just dry firing, if you're dry firing the correct way, even without Dry Fire King, like those are the three things that you should be working on, and you should have no excuse not to be getting better.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, and that's a lot of it too, right? All those things, right? If you can run okay, as long as you can, perform those three fundamentals, you could do really well. And you were correct. Tanfo Timmy was 19th at 2022 Carry Optics Nationals. I just looked.
Yeah.
But and I did like Dry Fire King. I was on that for a while. I did that for a while. I was just my problem was I have a TV down in my dry fire room, in my dry fire
Mhm.
space. I would never turn the TV on to go do it. So I kind of got off Patreon for it just because it's like I can't spend as much as I love what he's doing. I just like I can't spend. So I'm not going to spend the money if I'm not going to use it. So,
No,
but
I hear you.
they were. It's still like, and the only one thing when I did use it, I did never have enough time to pick up my shit off the ground, and I'd miss a rep. That was just my bitch.
All well, that's where the Steve Anderson, so for me, what I would always do is, you know, no magazine, and
Mm-hmm.
then doing your reload, you do enough just to activate the button,
Mm-hmm.
and then just slam a new one in. Every once in a while, like so, for my dry fire video that I posted on Instagram, like showing people what I do to dry fire.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just for showsies, I put magazines in. One to confirm for myself, and two to show other people that like this does work. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but for the most part, no, I don't have anything in the gun when I'm dry firing, and that's actually super good training tool too because I found that it gets you used to. Plus, when I'm dry firing, I always have it's in a different spot right now. But I have dummy rounds that Jake Walker, Bullets and Band-Aids, made for me. So you fill it up, you sacrifice a magazine, you fill it up, and it feels like a real weighted mag. That's my dry fire mag. Um, and that way you can get used to what the gun feels like unloaded and loaded. Because if you can do the exact same thing every single time, despite the fact that the gun is loaded or the gun is not loaded, like pretty much what happens is you just master the gun in general. Um, I highly recommend that to people because, like you're going to be shooting a USPSA match and sometimes you're going to get down to you got no rounds in the magazine and your last round is in the pipe. The gun is going to get pretty light at that point. So like if you've only ever practiced reloading and transitioning and everything else like that with full mags, you're not getting the whole shooting experience. And you're not, in my opinion, you're not doing yourself due justice by practicing the correct way.
Right. And I guess what I claim it to be is the fact that I did start with Glocks, and I used the mag, like, or even, I used Double Alpha's dry fire mag for the Glocks too, which was an interesting, it was nice and they worked. They didn't break, unlike the 2011 big stick I got. But, well, the 40 millimeter 2011s are fine. The big stick fucking blew apart and I couldn't fix it. But, no, so I mean, I was worried about I'd always would do the stupid. I wouldn't want to do the wick flick as people call it. I was always due diligent of drop the mags. Bring the gun back, drop it, and do the reload. So that's why it's just something that I've never gotten away from is having like a dummy mag in the gun. But it does make sense because sometimes you will have the one in the pipe and that's it.
Yeah, sometimes you're going to get down to, I mean, like I tell everybody this, you should always practice with no mag in the gun and sometimes with a mag in the gun. You got to change it up because you got to know what to expect in all sorts of different situations. I mean, that's part of the thing with USPSA is, people are like, "Oh, I hate this." And I'm like, "Yeah, you hate it because you never practice it." And like, it's like Dry Fire King. We go back to weapon presentations. Sometimes weapon presentation is with your weak hand. And if you never practice your weak hand, like, of course you're going to hate it because you're going to suck. And I hate it too when I'm practicing with it. But the difference is like, okay, if you want to get masterclass GM scores on those classifiers, or if you want to do well at that major, you'd be shocked how much of a difference practicing with your weak hand, because sometimes you're going to run into a stage where it's like, transition to your weak hand. That is literally half this game, is just practicing the off-brand stiff that nobody else ever practices. And as long as you do those things and you put yourself in weird situations, dude, that's part of the other thing too. Like with Dry Fire King, I'm not doing everything that Dry Fire King is telling me to do. It'll sometimes it'll pull up a stage and it'll be like, here's 8 targets, you got 8 seconds, draw and shoot. Well, that's not all I'm doing. Like sometimes I add in a reload. Sometimes I'm like, okay, I'm going to start on this end of the living room and I'm going to practice going over here. And then you've got other stages in Dry Fire King where it tells you, practice with your gun up. So at that point, I take an opportunity. I'm starting there with the handgun unloaded, and yeesh, I'm bad at the camera. I'm starting with the handgun unloaded. The gun's cocked, and I'm pointing at a target, and like it'll be like the screw in the panel on your light switch on the wall, and I'm pointing at that from across the room. And as soon as that beep goes off, I'm pulling the trigger, trying to make the gun not move, right? As fast as I can. And then I'm grabbing a new mag and I'm dipping and I'm pointing back towards the TV, walking towards the targets on the TV, like transitioning into those. Because again, sometimes in USPSA, you're going to have those situations where it's going to be like, I could reload here. And if I reload here, that's my best bet for not having to do dumb shit the rest of the stage. And that's what makes or breaks people, is that like, yeah, it's a high risk, high reward. But if you pull it off, like you're going to smoke everybody else on that stage, and that's how you win matches.
Yeah.
Just from doing the basic fundamentals and just the weird stuff that nobody ever practices. Nobody ever thinks to themselves on their own, like, oh, I should practice this because I might be in that situation. I can't recommend Dry Fire King enough. And I get nothing out of recommending it. I have no relationship with that guy.
Other than that you pay him money.
I've actually, at one point I actually was paying more. I was like, give me recommendations and I'll consider it thing. And then I gave him like 3 recommendations and he didn't, he was like, I'm not going to do any of those. And I was like, okay, well then why am I paying you $7 a month? So I started paying him 3.
Might as well, right? Might as well. Hey, I don't blame you there. I mean, but no, that's really cool, and I love this conversation, how it's gone, and it's been awesome. I do have a couple more questions before we end this tonight.
Yeah, I got you, bud.
But and I lost where my place was. Oh, this is a great one. What is something that current Rob would like to tell past Rob about shooting?
Mm. Kind of what we just talked about. Get focused and train the things that matter.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would tell myself, and that's where I'm kind of at now with a lot of people that I talk to and I hang out with. There's a crowd of gun store dudes that I hang out with, and most of them just look at it as entertainment and everything else like that. But like, there's a couple of them that are convinced like the gun matters.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter. And the one guy was like, yeah, well, the only reason a Canic rival beat everybody is because Nils was going to beat everybody regardless. And I'm like, right, like you're proving my point. Like the gun doesn't matter. It's a highly personal choice, and it's up to you whatever you want to do, regardless of whether or not Nils actually likes the Canic rival, which he probably does. But regardless of whether or not he actually likes it, like he still smoked everybody with it. Like that should tell you something. So it's not the gun. And I think that was bone stock too, like with maybe with the tungsten guide rod, just because so he could tune down the recoil a little bit. But I think for the most part it was bone stock, and that should tell you something. And that's what I would go back and tell myself. Pick a gun, pick a platform that works, that has no glaring reliability problems, and stick with it, and train the things that matter.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, great pieces of advice. Pick a gun, train with it, and do the stuff that matters. If people actually did that, they would get better. I mean, that's truly that's truly is
Well, at the
the
end of
words
the
of
day,
advice. Mm-hmm.
you and I both know half the sport is entertainment. And some of these guys, like, they get legit entertainment. Like the one guy's building himself a Shadow 2.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and if that's what you're into, like, by all means, don't let me stop you, because at the end of the day, like, this is entertainment. But if you're asking, like, hey, what's the best gun I can possibly buy for USPSA? It's like, dude, it's like comparing apples and oranges. Like, there's dudes that kick ass with clocks. How long did Shane Coley reign supreme in limited with a clock?
It was a while.
Yeah. I mean, there's just so many, and it's funny because with all the P320 talk, so many people shit on P320s, and the thing, like Shadow 2's like better than a P320, and I'm like, yeah, that's P320s have been beating out Shadow 2s for a while at nationals, so
Mm-hmm.
I don't think one is necessarily objectively better than the other. That being said, Gray Guns blows people like stock city out of the water.
Mm-hmm.
That's not even comparable, but that's a whole different story.
Right. Absolutely. But we just haven't seen Eric Graffel come over in a while to destroy everyone's
Oh,
feelings with his
yeah.
Shadow 2 yet.
Yeah.
And then his kid's gonna show up and destroy everybody too, and then
Dude, that guy. I mean, yeah,
those
exactly.
those Frenchmen, those French guys who destroy us all. But oh, so I guess here's the last kind of question I had. Well, one last question, and then we'll kind of get this to the wrap up. But what is your make ready?
Mm. Um, like the routine.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, so I don't believe in the make ready. I don't believe in the GM make ready routine. There is no amount of sitting on the stick and thinking about what you're going to do that is going to prepare you for that moment. Everything else that you have done to be prepared for that moment should have been in the week before the match, should have been in the months before the match, should have been in the year before the match. So my make ready routine is, get up, load the gun, run in your head one last time what you're going to do, because you should have already done it 10 times by now.
Mm-hmm.
Load the gun or unload the gun, like depends upon. apparently, I have never noticed this, but apparently I am notorious for seating the gun 4 times, and it's always 4 times in my holster. So apparently I will like, seat it like clack, 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 like clack, like, and the fourth time is the time where I'm like, okay, like it's seated, and then I'll leave my hand on it. And then you sort of have that moment where like you take one good breath and you just focus. And then like you're pointing your eyes at whatever you need to point it at, whether it's the target, whether it's the handgun, whatever. And then everything else is completely out of your head. If I had to compare it to anything, it's like there's a movie, I can't remember the scene, but it's with Ray Stevenson, who's dead now, R.I.P. It's with Ray Stevenson, but there's a movie where like he's like trying to listen, and he's listening like really hard, and he hears something, and then he just goes, like that's kind of the same thing that like when I'm trying to focus, it's like, okay, like hash out all the bullshit and go. And that whole thing probably takes like 30 seconds to do. Like I said, I don't believe in the GM make readies that you're going to sit there for a minute, 2 minutes, and all that stuff. Because like now you're just wasting my time, and now you're a jerk.
You're not wrong. Well, and
you
here's
don't
the thing:
you don't do the GM make ready, do you?
No, I mean mine's might be a little bit longer than yours, but it's not like notoriously horrible. I have squatted, and I regularly squat with people who it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
No, because like mine is like I get told make ready, I unlock, I got to drag the gun out of the holster, rackety rack 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 rack. It's all, but it's in clicks of 4. I don't know what it is. It's 1 2 3 4. Turn, make sure the dot's on. Check the dot. Do 1 or 2 draws just to make sure I've got that good programming that support hand grip pressure, because it's like that is the one thing I noticed that can't makes or break a stage for me on accuracy. It's not that the dot or the vision wasn't there on the spot. It's the fact that I was getting lazy on the grip. Yeah. So I'll check that. Take like, because I'm weird. I'm open. I have 3 mags plus my big stick. So I'll take the last mag that's in my last pouch, put it in, rack it, pull it so I can Barney up, put the big stick in, tap it. I'm weird. But when you take the first mag out, safety goes up. Put the big stick in, make sure it seats. Deactivate safety, press check the gun, put the slide back, put the safety on, put it back in the holster.
Yeah.
And then it's that breath. And it might be just focus on that first position to make sure I know what I'm doing. Take that breath, and then it's go time. But I'm weird. I will respond to the RO when they're like, "Are you ready?" I'm like, "Yep." It's because it's like, let's do this.
Sometimes I respond to the RO too, but that's when, at that point, I'm in autopilot mode. Like I'm in the mode of just like, let's get shit done. Because you can hear me. Sometimes like I talk to the RO and I'm like, all right, let's do this. Like it just depends upon like what the biggest thing is, you just got to have it in your head what you're going to do. And once you got it in your head, everything else is irrelevant. Like Steve, I hate to call him out. I love you, Steve. But Steve Bird is the king of make ready GMs. That my God, he will sit there for like 2 minutes and he'll be like, oh, okay, like my belt's in the perfect place and everything else like that. And it's like, Steve, you don't drive fire, bud. Like, like there's no amount of you sitting here that is going to delay the inevitable of whatever is going to happen. And that's something else I'll just briefly touch on. And this goes back to what I said before. Whatever's going to happen is in that stage is going to happen. You're not going to be able to stop it. There's no amount of blah, blah, blah. The only way to stop it is all the work that you did beforehand. And you know what? Sometimes you get screwed. It's just life, right? JJ got popper fucked at like 2020, didn't he? Like all the work that man has done, and he got popper fucked.
Maybe it's 21. I think it's 21 nationals. Because 2020, I think, was still 21. In frost. I think 2020 was still in frost proof.
Okay. So yeah, like all the work that guy did, and that's where the term came from. It's from that, like all the work that man has done in his life, which is countless more hours than most human beings have ever spent with a gun. And that just happens. Or like when, God, something happened to Max Michel. I can't remember what it was, but something happened to Max Michel. And you know what? It happened to me. Like at Virginia State, I got popper screwed. And Russell was the RO. Russell Fortney was the range master there, and he came up and he was like, "Dude, I'm sorry. Like, there's nothing I can do, and there's nothing you can do. Like, sometimes it just happens." Took me down from third place behind Hempel and Keanu, I think, to ninth place. So that was a solid kick in the balls.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't add an extra 20 seconds onto a stage that didn't need to be there.
Mm-hmm.
That one sucked too, because I mean I drilled that thing like straight in the middle, and I shot it again, and it was like not gonna fall, and then like for whatever reason a gust of wind came in just right and went. Beep. That was it.
Oh,
And then I'm just standing there like ah. Like, Dave Riddle's actually got that on footage. He promised me he wouldn't post it, but Dave, if you're listening to this, I give you permission to post it now. Just bleep out the symphony of curse words that came out of my mouth.
right, right. Oh, yeah. No, I had a thought, but I guess I lost it. So I'll move on, which is no big deal. So this is the part of the show where I like to let the shooter pay back to the people who've been helping out. We've talked a little bit about them throughout the the show, but go ahead and give the companies who you're dealing with or who support you, give them the love that they deserve.
Okay, deal. First one, John from Outdoor Dynamics. Fantastic human being.
Mm-hmm.
Probably one of the best people I've ever met in my entire life. He's a bit rough around the edges, but he is one of the best people I've ever met in my entire life. That dude would give you the shirt off of his back in order to make something happen, as long as he sees that you're a good person. So, John, thank you. Second, Joel from Align Tactical. Joel from Align Tactical was my second sponsor, and I actually met Joel because I had previously bought one of his extendo levers, and I was running a Springer Precision at the time, and I got screwed on a stage that was weak hand shooting, and because of the Springer paddle, the magazine dumped out of my hand at Nationals, and I was already having a bad match. That was my first Carry Optics Nationals, so I'm hoping to redeem myself at 2024. And I texted Joel on the Align Tactical Instagram page after that and was like, "Hey, you don't know me, but I shoot a couple of your levers. Can we talk about a sponsorship?" And he was like, "Sure." This was at Nationals. He was like, "What do you want?" And I was like, "Free parts." He's like, "Deal." So ever since then, I've been getting free parts from Joel. So this actually what's on this. It's actually what's on this P365 grip is a Align Tactical magazine release. I don't have any yet for this, but they're on their way from Joel. So Joel, I greatly appreciate you. You're the man. And for everybody that's looking for P320 accessories and P365 accessories that are so good that even Gray Guns and the Sig Source tells them, Align Tactical is the man. Third company, Brower. Josh Bennett, if you're listening to this, I know you're at SHOT Show right now, probably getting drunk with your buddies, but I appreciate you guys sending me this, and I appreciate the conversations because you guys are good people, and this is a good product, and I sincerely think this has a place in the market, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon. And I'm happy to see, and I'm excited to see what you're doing with the steel ones. Joe Potter, Mischief Machine, you're the man. Can't wait to see what you got in the future either. I'm not affiliated sponsor-wise with them, with Mischief Machine, or Brower, but you know what? Both of those guys have been really good to me. Another company, not sponsored by, but I'm beginning a relationship with them, Gray Guns. If you shoot a P320 or an HK or whatever, my experience has only been with the P320s, but if you want a solid gun company that, yeah, they're pricey, but you know what? Like, you're paying their kids tuitions. That's why you're paying more. And also you're getting a quality product with lifetime warranty, to the point where if you have any questions at all, they want to know what's going on. Keith Hosey is the main gunsmith out there. Jordan Castro is their operations manager, I believe. Jordan, I apologize if I got that wrong. I haven't met Bruce yet, but I met those two. And Chris Sweeten is their customer service guy. Those three dudes are the dream team. They are some of the nicest people on planet Earth, and they will work with you to get you what you want and make sure that it's quality. I don't think you could find a better gun company. And I sincerely tell everybody, like, hey, if you want to buy with confidence and you want to know that you're buying from good people, Gray Guns is the way to go. I love their products, and I hope to keep shooting their products in the future. So we'll see what's going on with that. And Outside of that, oh, Dan Feltyberger, Sussex Gunworks. Um, you should definitely give him some love. That guy runs his own gun shop, but like he does like custom trigger work, and it doesn't even have to be P320s. Like I said, he's getting into Shadow 2s. He just did Dylan Garton's CZ75 Shadow 2 triggers. That would be a good guy for your podcast too. He did Dylan Garton's CZ75 triggers. Those things are immaculate. Dan is a trigger god. The man is probably one of the smartest people I've ever met, and he knows what he's doing with the trigger. So, Dan, you're the man. If there's anybody else that I have forgotten, please do not be pissed off.
Right? It's not that we don't love you. It's the fact that our brains don't hold that much for remembering of everybody. Because I do it all the time.
Yeah.
Why do you think on the screen below me is everyone who supports the podcast? Because I would forget to say it, so I can read it.
Yeah.
But Rob, thank you, brother, for coming on. I've had a hoot. We've had a good conversation. I think the listeners will get a lot out of this one. So, thank you for joining me tonight. And to the listeners, get out and do the things. I will see you on the next one.
Appreciate you, Manny.